Millionaire's daughter had only 7 days to live. What the black employee did left her mother in tears. The sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Stanton mansion, making the crystal chandeliers glimmer and the marble floors shine like mirrors. The wealth of the house was overwhelming, but none of it mattered in that moment. A silence heavier than gold lingered, the kind of silence that made even luxury feel fragile. Inside the hospital room, the brightness of chandeliers was replaced with the sterile glow of white walls and the faint beep of machines. Evelyn sat at her daughter's bedside, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as they held Lily's smaller ones. The world knew Evelyn as a woman of power, a millionaire with endless resources, yet here, she was nothing more than a mother trying to stop the unstoppable. The doctor's voice carried a weight heavier than the mansion's walls could bear. "Mrs. Stanton," he said carefully, "Lily has a rare aggressive condition. She has only 7 days to live." The words sliced through the silence. Evelyn's eyes widened, her breath caught, and tears slid down her cheeks without permission. She clutched Lily's hand tighter, as though sheer will could hold her daughter here. Lily, just 12, tried to be brave. She blinked rapidly, her lips trembling, and whispered, "Mom, it's okay." Her fragile voice cracked, but she forced a small smile to comfort her mother. Evelyn's own voice broke into pieces. No, this can't be. There has to be another way." But the doctor's answer was final. "I'm sorry. We will do everything to make her comfortable. But her time is limited." Evelyn's reflection trembled in the hospital window, her fingers brushing Lily's soft ones, her heart screaming against the truth her mind could not change. The mansion, the cars, the bank accounts, none of it could buy her daughter more time. Lily turned her gaze to the window, sunlight warming her pale face. She held her blanket tightly, summoning courage beyond her years. In a whisper almost lost to the hum of machines, she said, "I want to see something magical before I go." Evelyn's tears flowed freely, her voice breaking as she stroked her daughter's hair. "Thanks, sweetheart. Anything you want." The hospital walls seemed to close in around them, ordinary and lifeless, a cruel contrast to the treasures Evelyn had surrounded herself with. For the first time, she realized the brightest jewels could not protect her from the darkest truth. In that fragile moment, something shifted. The richest heart in the room was not the mother's or the doctor's, but the little girl's, the child who faced her end with hope instead of despair. Evelyn held Lily's hand, her soul aching, her wealth useless. And yet in the shadow of grief a seed was planted. Lily's whispered wish lingered in the air, fragile but powerful, as if calling for someone unseen, someone overlooked, to rise. For sometimes the smallest wishes awaken courage in the most unexpected places. And in the quiet of that hospital room, a story began that would change everything. The Stanton mansion stood tall and silent under the weight of grief. Its grand halls, polished floors, and towering portraits of ancestors reflected a legacy of wealth and power. Yet in the quiet corners moved the people who made it all function, their presence as invisible as the air they breathed. Among them was Marcus, the caretaker. He had worked for the family for years, his broad hands familiar with every inch of the estate. To Evelyn and her circle, he was just another employee, useful but forgettable. To Marcus, it was simply survival. His long hours paid the bills, though never enough to fully escape the shadow of debt. He carried the scars of prejudice in silence, knowing that in this world, wealth often decided whose voice mattered and whose didn't. Despite the weight on his shoulders, Marcus carried something Evelyn had lost: compassion. He noticed things others overlooked. He saw how Lily's face lit up when sunlight sparkled through her toy's glass prism. He watched her fascination as she traced the patterns of leaves against the window pane. While Evelyn discussed specialists and new treatments with her wealthy friends, Marcus saw the little girl fighting to hold on to joy in the simplest of ways. And when he overheard her soft whisper, "I want to see something magical before I go," the words pierced through him. He froze in the hallway, his heart aching with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. That night, Marcus lay awake in his modest room tucked away behind the mansion's garages. The sound of laughter from parties often filled these halls, but now the silence was heavy. He stared at the cracked ceiling above his bed and thought about the girl upstairs. He remembered his own sister, gone too soon because medicine was too expensive for his family to afford. He clenched his fists, the pain of old wounds fueling a quiet resolve. He would not stand by and let another child fade without knowing magic. The next morning, Marcus tried to speak. He caught Evelyn as she left Lily's room, her eyes red from crying. "Mrs. Stanton," he said softly, "sometimes children need more than medicine." "Maybe we could—" Evelyn cut him off sharply. "Marcus, thank you, but we have doctors for that. We don't need distractions." Her tone wasn't cruel, just dismissive, the way one swats away something that seems unimportant. Marcus bowed his head, the sting of dismissal familiar. He stepped back into the shadows where people like him were expected to remain. But inside, something had shifted. He could no longer ignore the fire Lily's wish had lit in him. As the days ticked down, Marcus began to plan quietly. He studied her smiles, noted the little things that drew her attention, the color of the sky at dusk, the flutter of birds in the garden, the laughter of children playing outside the gates. He pieced these fragments together, a puzzle that might form a kind of magic money could never buy. He moved carefully, so as not to draw suspicion. To Evelyn he was invisible. To the rest of the staff he was just another pair of hands. But Marcus carried something greater than recognition. A vision born of empathy, a plan fueled by love. He would create moments that Lily would remember until her last breath. He didn't yet know how, but he knew this. Her final days would not be defined by fear. They would be filled with wonder. As Evelyn pored over medical documents late into the night, Marcus stood quietly outside the mansion, looking up at the stars. The vastness above seemed to whisper back Lily's wish, reminding him of the task that had chosen him. He exhaled deeply, knowing the risks, knowing that one wrong step could cost him his job, maybe his livelihood. But in that moment, none of it mattered. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt the weight of destiny on his shoulders. He was no doctor, no man of wealth or power, but he carried something Evelyn could not see, hidden wisdom, born of struggle, sharpened by pain, and guided by a heart that refused to let a child's hope die unanswered. The clock was ticking. Every sunrise brought Lily closer to the end of her 7 days, and Marcus knew he could not waste a single one. His plan was fragile, risky, and hidden in the shadows of the Stanton mansion. But the girl's whispered wish for something magical had rooted itself deep within him, and he was determined to bring it to life. He began with small steps, moving silently through the house, blending into the background as he always had, but now with a secret purpose that gave every action meaning. The first evening, Marcus found Lily gazing longingly at the fiery glow of the sunset through her hospital window. He leaned close and whispered, "Do you trust me?" Her eyes widened, curiosity sparking. That night, when Evelyn was distracted with calls to doctors, Marcus carefully wheeled Lily to the rooftop terrace, the cool wind brushing her face as the sun sank into the horizon. For the first time in weeks, Lily laughed, pure, unrestrained laughter, as the sky turned shades of orange and violet. Marcus stood behind her, his heart swelling at the sight, knowing he had stolen a piece of time back from despair. Each day, he added more. On the second, he arranged for the gardener's gentle hound to wander into Lily's room. The dog curled up at her side and Lily buried her face in its fur, giggling through tears. On the third, Marcus convinced a stable hand to bring a pony quietly into the courtyard. From her wheelchair, Lily stroked its mane, her small fingers tracing its warmth as though touching magic itself. These were risks, each one daring, each one a step closer to discovery. If Evelyn caught him, he could lose everything: the job, the roof over his head, the fragile respect he had earned. But when Lily's laughter echoed down the empty hallways, Marcus knew the risk was worth it. Evelyn began to notice. She walked past Lily's room one evening and froze, her daughter's laughter spilling into the corridor. She pressed her hand to her lips, tears forming, confused and astonished. Doctors had predicted nothing but decline, yet here was Lily, glowing with joy. Evelyn asked the staff, but no one dared speak. The miracles seemed to appear out of nowhere, and Evelyn, consumed by grief and confusion, never thought to look at the man standing quietly in the shadows. Marcus faced his own battles. Alone in his small quarters, he fought the voice that whispered he wasn't enough. He remembered every insult, every time someone made him feel invisible, every door closed in his face because of who he was and what he lacked. But then he remembered Lily's smile, the light returning to her eyes. That smile was stronger than his doubts, stronger than the barriers stacked against him. Each time she laughed, he felt the weight of the world lift, even if only for a moment. The days passed in a blur of daring acts. Marcus led Lily into the garden at night, lanterns glowing softly around her, transforming the hedges into a fairy tale. He brought musicians from the staff's community, who played quietly in the servants' quarters, their music drifting through the air as Lily listened in awe. He risked reprimand by sneaking her pastries from the kitchen, laughing as powdered sugar dusted her lips. Every act was small, yet together they created a world of wonder Evelyn's wealth had never imagined. By the 5th day, the mansion itself seemed to change. The once cold and silent hallways echoed with Lily's voice. Staff who had always walked with their heads bowed now smiled when they passed her room. Even the air felt lighter, as if Marcus's quiet rebellion against despair had infected the house with life. Evelyn watched her daughter with growing awe, struggling to understand how her little girl seemed to be experiencing magic while doctors spoke only of endings. The contrast was stark. In a mansion where wealth measured everything, it was not the money that gave Lily joy. It was the man whose heart beat with empathy, who risked everything not for recognition but for a child's fleeting smile. Marcus's ingenuity turned ordinary moments into treasures no fortune could buy. In those days, Lily discovered more beauty than she had seen in her 12 years. And Marcus discovered the strength to defy the invisibility the world had imposed on him. As the 6th day ended, Lily's laughter carried through the halls once again. Evelyn stood outside the door, tears streaming silently, unable to step inside, afraid of breaking whatever miracle was unfolding. And inside, Marcus watched Lily's face glow in the candlelight, his heart knowing what his mind refused to admit. The clock was still ticking, and the final day was drawing near. The days had grown heavier. Lily's laughter, once bright and unshakable, now came in softer fragments, each one strained by the weakness settling into her body. By midweek, the sparkle in her eyes dimmed, and even Marcus felt the weight of time pressing harder against them all. Yet he pressed forward, unwilling to surrender to despair. His quiet defiance could no longer go unnoticed. Evelyn found him one evening, returning Lily to her room after a stolen hour in the gardens lit with hidden lanterns. "What are you doing with my daughter?" she demanded, her voice sharp but trembling. Marcus stood silently, his hand steady on the wheelchair. "Giving her joy," he answered simply. Evelyn's gaze hardened, searching his face. "You think you can do what doctors and wealth cannot?" The air between them thickened with the clash of pride and pain. Marcus's voice remained calm, though fire burned beneath it. "I don't need wealth. I just need her smile." Their exchange was raw, cutting through layers of class and prejudice. Evelyn accused him of overstepping, of forgetting his place. Marcus met her words with quiet conviction, never asking for recognition. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about Lily. I won't let her final days be filled only with sorrow." Evelyn faltered, the steel in her tone cracking. For the first time, she saw not just an employee, but a man shaped by grief and courage. Later, Marcus sat alone, memories washing over him. A hospital room, a young woman's hand slipping from his grasp too soon, the helplessness that consumed him, the silence that followed. That pain had never left him. It was why he could not stand by and watch Lily fade into shadows. His compassion was born from wounds Evelyn had never imagined. The tension between them softened as Evelyn began to watch differently. She lingered near Lily's door, seeing the small miracles Marcus created. A bird perched at the window, music drifting in from the staff wing, stolen moments of wonder stitched into the girl's fleeting days. Evelyn's pride bent under the weight of truth. She realized the humanity she had overlooked, the strength of a man who asked for nothing but the chance to give. When Marcus whispered to Lily about a surprise, her frail face lit with hope. That night, Evelyn followed at a distance, her heart torn between fear and awe. Outside, a hot air balloon waited, glowing softly against the starlit sky. With careful arms, Marcus lifted Lily into the basket, wrapping her in blankets. Evelyn climbed in after them, silent, her breath trembling. The balloon rose gently, the mansion shrinking below. Above them, the city stretched wide, jeweled with lights, a living constellation mirrored by the stars overhead. The wind brushed their faces, cool and freeing. Lily's laughter rang out, fragile but pure, carried high into the night. Tears streaked down her cheeks as she looked from the glittering skyline to the endless sky. "It's magic," she whispered, her voice breaking with wonder. Evelyn turned, watching Marcus steady the child, his own eyes glistening. For the first time she felt humbled, not by grandeur or wealth, but by a man's quiet courage. The moment transformed them all. Lily's joy became eternal, Evelyn's pride softened into gratitude, and Marcus, the overlooked caretaker, stood as a hero bathed in starlight. Morning broke heavy with silence. The penultimate day had arrived, and with it came the sharp reality that Lily's time was slipping faster than anyone had prepared for. Her breaths were shallow, her body fragile as glass, yet her eyes still carried a quiet hunger for life. Marcus watched her closely, refusing to surrender to despair. Where others saw an ending, he searched for a miracle, not of medicine, but of love. All day he moved with quiet urgency, making calls, sending messages, reaching out to people who had once been as invisible as he was, neighbors, friends from the old community center, local musicians, painters, children he had coached in after-school programs. By dusk, the mansion's gates opened not to wealthy specialists, but to ordinary souls carrying instruments, brushes, flowers, and light. They came humbly, but together, they carried magic. When Evelyn walked into Lily's room, she froze. The sterile white walls had been transformed into a dreamscape. Strings of soft lights twinkled like stars. Paintings bloomed across easels. Musicians filled the air with gentle notes, violins and guitars weaving lullabies that wrapped around the girl's fragile frame. Children from the neighborhood scattered flower petals across the marble floor, giggling softly, their joy blending with the rhythm of the music. Lily's face glowed. Her laughter, faint but radiant, broke through the heavy air. She clapped her hands weakly as a painter held up a canvas of her favorite toy horse, and a cellist's bow drew out a note so tender it seemed to carry the child's heartbeat within it. The room, once a place of hushed despair, now pulsed with color, music, and the warmth of strangers turned family. Evelyn's throat tightened as she watched. Guilt rose in her chest, sharp and undeniable. For years she had overlooked the man before her, dismissed him as little more than a caretaker. Now, with tears streaking her face, she saw him clearly. The one who had given her daughter more life in 7 days than she had in years of privilege. Her voice broke as she whispered, "I thought I knew what love could do." "I was wrong." Marcus lowered his gaze, humble as ever. "Love isn't about what we can buy," he said quietly. "It's about what we're willing to give." His words landed like truth etched into stone, a lesson Evelyn knew she would carry forever. The night deepened, but no one wanted to leave. Musicians played softer, their notes rising like prayers. Candles flickered, their flames reflecting in Lily's wide eyes as she looked around in wonder. She whispered, almost to herself, "It's like the whole world came to see me." Marcus leaned close, his voice steady but tender. "That's because you are the whole world to those who love you." Evelyn reached for Marcus's hand then, something she had never done before. It trembled in hers, rough with years of labor, yet stronger than any foundation her wealth had built. In that moment, barriers of class, race, and pride dissolved. There was no employer and servant, no rich and poor. There was only shared humanity, bound together by the fragile heartbeat of a child. The room swelled with beauty, notes lingering in the air, colors dancing in candlelight, children's laughter echoing off marble walls. For a fleeting moment, death itself felt powerless in the face of such love. Lily closed her eyes, smiling, her cheeks glistening with tears not of sorrow but of joy. Evelyn wept openly, and Marcus, standing at her side, felt silent vindication. The miracle was not that Lily would be saved, but that in her final hours, she had been given the fullness of life, surrounded not by machines and silence, but by music, light, and the boundless reach of love. Dawn crept into the mansion quietly, painting the walls with a muted gold that felt almost too gentle for the weight it carried. Lily lay in her bed, her breaths shallow, her small frame wrapped in blankets, as though the world was holding her close for one last time. Marcus sat at her side, his hand cradling hers, his eyes fixed on her face. Evelyn stood near the window, her body trembling, torn between despair and a newfound reverence for the man who had given her daughter more than she ever could. Lily's lips moved faintly, her voice soft as wind through leaves. "Thank you for the magic." Her eyes fluttered toward Marcus, and in that fragile moment, she wasn't looking at a caretaker or an employee. She was looking at her hero. A final breath slipped through her lips, and her small hand fell limp against his. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound, a silence that broke hearts but also etched an eternal bond. The mansion was still. Staff gathered quietly in the hallway, heads bowed, tears streaking their faces. Even the family dog curled beside the vacant bed, whimpering softly as though it understood the loss. Evelyn sank to her knees, grief pouring out of her in waves. But when she looked at Marcus, she saw not just a man, she saw a legacy of love carved through humility, sacrifice, and courage. Days later, Evelyn stood before her family and employees in the grand hall. Her voice wavered, but her resolve was strong. "For years I believed wealth gave me power," she confessed. "But this man showed me what true power is: compassion, sacrifice, and love." She turned to Marcus, her eyes glistening. "I failed to see you, Marcus. But today, and forever, I honor you." What followed was transformation. Evelyn ordered sweeping changes: fair wages, health care for star families, scholarships for their children, and a foundation in Lily's name dedicated to bringing joy to terminally ill children. The walls that had once symbolized wealth now became pillars of service. Echoing Marcus's example, narration carried the audience into quiet, cinematic frames. The dog lying beside Lily's empty bed, the soft rustle of wind moving through the gardens, the gentle chime of chandeliers no longer glittering with vanity but reflecting a new purpose. Marcus was seen walking the mansion grounds alone, shoulders heavy with loss, yet lifted with quiet pride. He had fulfilled Lily's final wish. The story closed with Evelyn's words echoing in narration, woven into the silence like a lesson carved into stone. Sometimes, the richest hearts are hidden where we least expect them. The screen lingered on Marcus looking at the horizon, his silhouette framed in the fading light. Embodying the truth that heroism and love are never bound by class, race, or privilege. They are bound by humanity. It was an ending stitched with both sorrow and hope. A reminder that even in the shadow of loss, love leaves a legacy brighter than any wealth.